Okay. How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to do our concrete stairs layout lesson. And this lesson, the objective for this lesson is given a finished dimension for concrete stairs. You guys are going to be able to lay out a set of stairs with no more than 3/16 variance between steps. Okay? That's the accuracy I'm looking for. Prior to this lesson, we covered our codes and terminology, our stair codes and terminology. We covered our carpentry math for stairs, and we covered our print reading. Okay? So we're going to use all of that information to go about this lesson here. Okay? Our concrete stairs layout. All right? To lay out a set of concrete stairs, the equipment we need is we need a pencil, tape measure, chalk line, and a 2-foot level. Okay? When doing any stairs, it's important to be accurate, right? For any set of stairs. You don't want to walk up a set of stairs, and that's the first thing you're going to notice right away if something's crooked or something's off, right? So that's one of the main things we want to focus on today. In the previous lessons, you guys gathered all this info from the print, right? And so we're going to use that information. You guys are going to help me lay these stairs out, okay? So you guys will help me along the way. All right. So to start out, we're going to use that given dimension to our first riser. Now, I'm going to use this dry erase board to lay out the set of stairs. But I can't use a pencil on it, so I'm going to use this dry erase marker. Okay? All right? Okay. So the information I need right away to start out is what the dimension is to my first riser.
3 feet from the wall.
3 feet from the control line. I'm going to count just the corner of this dry erase board as my control line, or wall, whichever. Okay? So all I'm going to do is take and measure 3 foot and then put a mark. Okay? My next step, take 2-foot level, and I'm going to plumb a line vertically. And I want this first line, to be something that runs a little bit longer than my riser height and my slab thickness. Because our first step, or what's the height of our risers?
6 3/4.
6 3/4. Very good, Mr. Johnson. All right. And our slab thickness, what do we have for that?
Slab thickness 8 inches.
8 inches. Man, you're all over it, Johnson. Superstar. So anyway, right away, I want to make sure that I measure up at least how much? 8 plus 6 3/4.
That's going to be 14 3/4.
Very good, Mr. Background. Very good. Very good. All right. So right off the bat, I'm going to do 2 things at once here. I'm going to measure my slab thickness, which is 8 inches. And then I'm going to measure 14 3/4. All right. Once I have those marks, from those marks, I'm going to take and level over, right? So for that first one, I'm going to make a line like so. About 1 foot for that 8-inch slab, just to give me a marker for later when we factor in our nosings, okay? We'll get to that as the lesson goes on. So our next step is to come up to that 14 3/4 mark. And I want to level over and make a mark on my level. At least, well, actually I want it to be a little bit longer than my tread depth, which is, what's my tread depth, Ms. Booth?
11 inches.
11 inches, very good. Okay, so I want to carry it over a little bit longer. And again, I want to carry all the lines through my layout. I want to make them a little bit longer because when I factor my nosing in later, we'll need that little bit of extra line there for ourselves. Okay, so I got up to my first riser. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure over my tread depth, which is 11 inches. And then I'm going to make a mark on that last horizontal line that I made. Okay? Where that mark is, I'm going to take my 2-foot level, and I'm going to plumb a line up. This time, I'm only factoring in my riser height. Mr. Bear, what's my riser height again? Mr. Lopez, why don't you help him out?
6 3/4.
6 3/4, all right? So I want to make sure that that line carries over at least 6 3/4. And you guys could just kind of guesstimate on that, okay? So I come up my 6 3/4, and I make another mark, okay? And I'm basically going to continue what I did on the previous step. From that mark, I'm going to level over. And how much do I want to at least mark of that level line, class?
At least 11 inches.
At least 11 inches, but I'm going to carry it over a little bit longer for when my nosing factors in. Very good. What do you think my next step is, Mr. Cleary?
Your next step is to go up to the next step.
Almost. You're almost there. But what I'm looking for
Over 11 inches.
is 11 inches over on that line. I'm going to mark my tread depth.
Oh yeah, tread that. And then you go up.
Very good. Very good, Mr.
Then you
Cleary.
go up.
Very good. All right. Now I'm going to continue doing this same method here, procedure, until I reach the top of my next deck. And can someone tell me how many risers it takes for me to get up to my next deck?
5.
5 risers, correct. So far I have 1, 2, I'm working on my third one. So if it does help you, you can always label them if you want. 1, 2, all right, we'll just kind of mark them as we go, okay? So I got my third one started. I'm going to come with my 3/4 inch. Make a mark. From that mark, I'm going to level a line over. A little more than 11 inches. And on that level line, I'm going to mark my 11. And that'll get me working on my 4th tread, or 4th riser, excuse me. Okay, that's number 4. Does anybody have any questions so far with the process? Okay. All right, very good. So everyone's tracking.
Yes, sir.
All right, outstanding, outstanding. Okay. So I'm working on my last one now. I know I have one left. So I'm going to come up my 6 3/4. Level over. A little more than 11 inches. And here I am working on my last riser. Measure my 11 inches over. Plumb a line. That's my 5th riser. My 5th and last. I'm going to measure out my 6 3/4. And then I'm going to make a level line up here. Okay. All right, and this top line actually represents my deck, okay? The deck that I tie into, okay? So this will probably continue on for quite a while until whatever wall comes into play or the edge of the building, depending on the situation, okay? So I talked about those nosings, all right? The next step is we have, so basically we have the top of concrete pretty much laid out, okay, for these steps, all right? We're going to factor in our nosings next, okay? And does anybody know the, Mr. Newsom, do you know the nosing size?
1 inch.
1 inch, very good, right? And that's actually, as we learned in our code and terminology class, that's one of the codes as far as Chicago building code. We have to have at least 1 inch of nosing in a high rise, in a multifamily dwelling, okay? So rather than take my tape measure and measure an inch in, our nosing is, as we covered in our terminology as well, is going to be basically in concrete, it's going to be a diagonal line, a protrusion of the tread past the riser, basically. And this is how we're going to draw it in there. Rather than take and measure 1 inch and then make a line, I actually have this, my level. If I measure it across this way, it's actually exactly an inch. So I'm gonna actually use this as my gauge, so I don't have to keep measuring each one. All I'm gonna do is put it sideways, put it on the riser on one side, make a mark here. And this is the reason why I carried my lines long, because now I'm gonna connect the top of my riser to that 1 inch back. And this line here represents finished concrete, and it gives me a nosing, the 1 inch nosing that is desired, okay? So I'm gonna do that actually on all my steps, give a 1 inch nosing. The last thing I'm going to do here, the last couple things, I actually want to know where the bottom of my slab is too. I actually have to lay that out, okay? And for my, we already talked about our decks. This deck was 8 inches. How thick is the deck that I'm tying into?
8 inches.
8 inches as well, okay? So in order to do that, all I'm going to do is come from my top of finished deck. I'm going to come down 8 inches, make a mark. And I'm actually going to go a little further down the deck, come down 8 inches, and make another mark, okay? And because I can't use a chalk line in this situation, I would normally just snap that line straight across, right? Well, I can't do that, so I just gave myself a straight edge over here that I'm going to use. This 2x4 here. And I'm going to draw in the bottom of that deck, and that represents the bottom of my concrete deck that I'm tying into with my stairs, okay? I also got to consider, I got to draw in or lay out the slab thickness of the stairs going up, okay? And the slab thickness, any slab thickness is basically the vertical dimension of the perpendicular dimension of the bottom of the slab, from the bottom to the finished slab, basically. And what we're calling our finish, the top of our finish, is the bottom of this nosing here, right? Because this is actually be the most shallow part of our slab thickness, okay? So all I'm going to do is on a slight diagonal here, I'm going to measure down 7 inches on one of my risers, 7 inches down on my other riser. And just to review, how thick is that stair slab thickness again?
7 inches.
I forgot to mention that. Okay, so we're measuring down our 7 inches. And it's at this point that I will take and snap a line as well. But I can't do that on my dry erase board. So that's why I got my straight edge here. So now at this point, drawing this in, and I'm actually going to plane it through the bottom of my second deck that I'm tying into. So now, basically, I have laid out my concrete stairs. This is the bottom of my deck. This is the top of concrete for each tread. I've put in the nosing, and this would be considered finished concrete for my risers. This is the finish of the top of my second deck, and this is concrete for the bottom of that deck. This is the bottom of my concrete slab, and this represents the top of my first concrete slab. So, in review, given finished dimensions of a concrete set of stairs, we're going to be able to lay these out with no more than 3/16 variance, and that's what I'm going to expect from you guys in the shop. Do you have any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you for your time.